Why is the water dropped?
There are rumors. The legend of the sword. Of a king other than yourself. Find him. I know your story.
What kind of a man would you become had you inherited your father's kingdom instead of being raised in a brothel? What gave you such drive? You felt it, didn't you? The power.
It was Vortigern who murdered your father. But what you didn't account for is what you can do with this sword.
You need to be careful. His power is increasing.
When people fear you, it is the most intoxicating sensation a man can possess.
You're starting to mean something. You're no longer a myth.
I'm gonna kill him.
Put him on his knees! You wanted the prophecy. Raise that sword. Show the people the power of Excalibur.
You're playing with fire.
But doesn't it make the palace burn well?
There's the king.
Guys, thanks so much for being here. Congratulations.
Sitting on my phone. There we go.
Thank you. Off? Have you shut? Is it on vibrate? Is it off just to make sure?
We'll see.
Okay. If
See
you
what
get
happens.
a call, you have to take it on the stage.
Okay.
That's the rule.
Inevitably, it'll be my mum. If someone does call, it'll be the old mum.
They'll love that. Everyone will love that.
We can put her on speakerphone, have a nice little chat.
I want to start with a rumor I heard about the casting of this. That Charlie, you offered to fight the other people that were up for this role in order to get this role. Is that true?
Maybe.
Guy?
Yeah, he didn't tell you who he had to fight, though. He didn't pick anyone in his class. We've got kids in the movie. He was very happy to take any of the kids on.
You wanted to fight young Arthur.
That's right. That's right. I'm not stupid.
What led you to offer to that? What was going on?
I was very, very skinny at the time. I was in the middle of shooting the last season of Sons of Anarchy, and the character that I played in that show was... Woo! He's faking. He's never seen 1 minute of the show. The character Jax Teller that I was playing was and having to endure a great tragedy in his life, so I'd lost a lot of weight to have a sort of physical representation of that trauma. And I went to meet Guy in the middle of shooting that season, so I showed up not looking quite as formidable as I think Guy was looking for his Arthur. And because Guy had never really seen anything that I'd done, didn't know how formidable I could
become.
So we talked a lot. Guy was very concerned about the physicality. So me being a cheeky chap said about halfway through the audition, you know what?
I'll fight any kids.
That's right. I'll fight any 8-year-olds you want to bring in here, and I'll show you just how formidable I can be.
Guy, what was your pitch going into doing this? Because when I saw the film on Friday night, it does not stop. There's never been a movie of this nature made like this before, in terms of like a medieval fable of any kind told this way. So what was your pitch? How did you take it to the studios?
The film I pitched, I think, was not the film we ended up with. We have a theory on this, that films pretty much set their own pace at a certain point. My job is to steer the head of the tiger. And after a couple of weeks, you start feeling out what the nature of it is, and then it tells you what it's going to be. So the first film we shot was 3.5 hours long. And then halfway through it, I fell asleep. And I realised I had to do some work.
That wasn't one of my scenes, just add a cliff note in there.
And so I realised there was a bit of work that needed to be done. And inevitably ended up being almost half that time. And because of that, it does take on an energy. But that energy is there to sustain my interest as much as it is anyone else's. I know if I'm entertained, then I suspect other people will be. There's nothing worse than watching a film going, oh, that's a good scene, but I don't care. And there was a little bit of that went on. So we truncated it, and then bish, bash, bosh, wonky, donkey, we got it working.
Well, I think it's fascinating because out of necessity to keep you awake, you actually do something like somewhat experimental with this film and how fast-paced it is and how much you truncate each scene to its like necessary core to maintain this kind of constant montage that's moving throughout the whole movie. Did you feel like you were onto something new while you were making it, or were you still just trying to keep your eyes open?
Yes, trying to keep my eyes open. There's a nervous moment when you realise you spent several $1 million shooting a scene and it's not going to end up in the movie. So, I brokered a deal, and that was to keep some of the scene in there, and that way it allowed you to broker the deal to truncate it. Otherwise, you just won't get rid of scenes that cost you $10 million. However, you just squish them together, get to the point, and what would have taken you, 10 minutes now takes you 1. And that's how vicious I was with the editing.
In the script, did you have Arthur sort of aging from child to grown man living in the streets? Was that a montage, or was that like a number of scenes that you ended up truncating as well?
Actually, that wasn't even in the script. We sort of made that up on the day. So
even in the midst of shooting too much, you're like, let's make up more. Throw it in. Let's go.
Yeah, and quite late in the process. Sorry, mate.
That's all right,
Sorry,
Charlie.
boss.
I know how much you like the
boss.
mic. You carry on. You'll see you'll get no short answers out of Charlie. Carry on, Charlie.
About 3 months into the process, Guy came up with this idea, and we all got very excited, and then we shot it. It was quite short, wasn't it? Touché, sir.
You don't want to expand on that, or you just...
Don't worry, he'll expand.
Unfortunately, you've sort of caught me out on this one, because I don't really have much more than that to say about it. It was you that came up with the idea, so why don't you tell the lovely people
That's
here
very kind of you, Charlie. Thank you very much.
how you came up with the idea, Mr. Ritchie.
No, I think it's all of us, really. As a creative team, what happens is you're sitting around and you end up having conversations about how can we make this better. And one thing leads to another thing, and you go, oh, how about a bit of this? And you go, oh, yeah, I like the sound of that. And collectively, you end up agreeing of what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. So all of that stuff, that montage that you're talking about, which probably took several weeks to shoot, amongst other things, lasts for 90 seconds, I think.
But so much of the film is similar to that montage in the sense that you start like that, and then you don't really end that momentum. Was that tough to keep up? Are you getting sick of the filmmaking questions?
No, I like it. I enjoy this position. I'm a bit distracted by... Sorry, what was the question? I was waiting for Charlie to answer it.
Keeping up the momentum, because you start with that montage, essentially. After the big battle scene, you start that montage, but then you don't end that momentum. Even scenes where most movies would slow down for exposition, you're like, no, I'm going to turn even this expository scene into a montage of some kind.
Well, that's just what happened. There is a scene that you'll be aware of where they disappear off into the Darklands, and that was 20 minutes long when we first shot it. We put it in there. Oh, that's interesting. Sort of. And then we turned it into 2 minutes. And that was the disparity in the lengths. And at 2 minutes, it's fabulous. And at 20, it's just not. But I fancied the idea. I think sort of like, I'd like to be taken as a serious filmmaker, which is the curse of many filmmakers, by the way. And you think, oh, serious filmmakers make this long. They'd make it long. So I try to make things long. And then you watch them, and it's boring. And then you make them short. So I go out trying to be serious, and I end up not being so serious in the end.
What's it like for you guys as the actors to shoot these incredible sequences that you're seeing in the script as potentially 20 minutes long, 30 minutes long, these epic sequences that then you go to the screening and maybe it's 2-3 minutes or a minute?
It's a good question. I've never had as an extreme experience as I had on this, that the film had evolved so much editorially from what I thought we were shooting on the day. But it's always really, really exciting. I mean, it's sort of the exciting part, and for me, also the nerve-wracking part, and I have a desire to be involved in every part of the filmmaking, and as an actor, is there any way we could put a curtain up here? We really love each other. We were spending a lot of time listening to each other talk, and this is
Charlie, I love listening to you talk. I'm just distracted by the T-shirts with your face on it.
Charlie Hunnam King. I love that. You know, so it's a part.
I've also noticed there's not many boys in here.
No. Well, pardon? Hi. Oh, thank you very much. But you know, there's a part of the editing process that I think makes actors very, very nervous, because we come in with an idea and a hope of what we want to try to convey and imbue in the characters that we play, and try to participate as much as possible. And then we leave the process, and it gets assembled and reimagined, and it evolves in the editing room. So what I've learned over my career is that you have to be very careful with who you decide to work with, because you have to trust that they're going to have good ideas in the editing room. And this was a grand departure from what we were doing on set, but it was very, very exciting. And I must say, I'm an enormous fan of Guy's, and I have been for many, many, many years. So I sort of anticipated that something exciting was going to have happened in the editing room. So it was exciting to go and actually see what Guy had come up with, and I was very, very happy. I've only seen the film once, but
I would imagine it feels a little like, oh, you removed my big dramatic speech, but I still look like a badass this entire movie, so that's all right.
Sure.
Djimon, your character is kind of the leader, one of the leaders of the rebellion against the king, played by Jude Law. Talk about your character a little bit.
Well, I play Bedivere. Bedivere is a trusted confidant to King Arthur, but more importantly, we dive a little deeper into Bedivere's backstory, where we find his relationship with the Pendragon family. He was a knight under Uther Pendragon. He was a trusted advisor to Uther, and so therefore it makes sense that you know, he will be a voice of wisdom to this new king.
How much research do you do going back, looking at the original sort of fable?
I sort of read everything that I could find about Bedivere, but I quickly realized it's only up in the time that Guy Ritchie called me and said, you know, I'm doing King Arthur. I'm thinking about you for Bedivere. I've met Guy Ritchie 20 years ago. I've been wanting to work with him for a long, long time.
Where did you guys meet?
In London.
Yeah, I think we met in a pub, Djimon.
Yes, I think we did.
It's usually where I meet most people.
And yeah, so I've been sort of like comfortably dreaming about the chance to work with him one day, and then the call came in, and obviously that was the first attraction to the story in itself. And but I came to the awareness of King Arthur growing up in France, and at the time, I thought that was a true story. That was a real story. There was a king, you know, called one King Arthur, and which the story resembles a lot of some of our kings in Africa. And so I really thought that was a true story back then. It's only up until after I talked to Guy Ritchie that I realized, doing research on Bedivere, that I realized this was a fictional story.
There is actually an African story that's almost identical to the King Arthur story about Shaka, who was like a famous king in Africa, but right. the story is almost completely parallel.
Guy, there's so much that you're doing with this that is a complete updating and kind of remix of the King Arthur and this story. When you're making this, how much are you, what's the line like in terms of how much you want to be referential towards what people think this period should look like, and how much you want to update it? Obviously, the score that you use is incredible and is the clear kind of like updating of this story. It feels very modern.
Well, the music's actually the key component. As long as we can be respectful of the essence of the narrative, which is about a man transcending himself, which is usually what most stories are about, as long as we held on to that, that's what our principal concern was. And thereafter, we made it for a contemporary audience. So we had to find a way of bridging between an antiquated historical world and a contemporary world. And the way we did that was through the score. And the score, one of the songs we use in it called Wild Berry, I was trying to remember that earlier on, actually. Wild Berry is 1,000 years old. That song's 1,000 years old. We dug it up out of the books of law, L-O-R-E, of English law, and then we reinterpreted it with the same lyrics. So in a contemporary fashion. So all the instruments we use are old, the song's 1,000 years old, but somehow we made it feel like it was contemporary. And that sort of fused the gulf between old and new.
Well, then also the dialogue and the characters that you create as well that are sort of, I think, referential towards to your world, to what you do with Sherlock and what you did with Snatch and Lock, Stock. They're very cheeky and snarky for that period of time.
Yeah, well, and to a degree, the reason I choose my actors is whether they understand that disposition, if you will, or that frequency. And Charlie, when we first met, as you know, Charlie knows, I didn't really know who he was, and I wasn't really that pro with the guy that I didn't know who he was. But once Charlie forced me to have a cup of tea with him, it didn't take long before I realized that we were on the same frequency. And within 15 minutes, I was pretty sure that we'd be making this film together. Because you get shorthand with someone. You know, do you understand this? And you just sort of, you never end up talking about the movie on any of these things, by the way. You always end up talking about, in this case, legalizing marijuana. And
where do you guys fall?
It's quite funny. Charlie, why don't you, you tell him.
Well, we were talking, I think Guy had a very creative interest, and I had a slightly more, I suppose, recreational interest in the California medical marijuana situation that we've had going on for many, many years. So much to my surprise, we spent that initial 2 hours going in and out of discussing that, along with some other sort of more sensible topics, but none of which were actually the film. We didn't talk about the film at all, which I had taken at that point to mean that this trip to England, although it was a lovely cup of tea and we had a bit of a giggle, was probably not going to amount to much. And then at the end of it, Guy said, well, I think you're actually, you know, potentially quite interesting for this, so would you come and do an audition for me?
Does that feel at all like an audition at the time when you have that cup of tea? Is there a part of you that's trying to sell yourself a little bit, or are you trying to find out if this is someone that you could work with personally?
No, I mean, I had no doubts. Like I said, I mean, it's sort of not lip service. I think that of the 3 films that I've watched most in my life, Snatch is one of them. Probably, maybe the film I've seen more times than any other film. So I was certain that I wanted to work with Guy. You know, honestly, I think there's a lot of Guy's personality in his film, and I had come to feel as though I knew him because of that. And obviously seeing some interviews, because I'm always interested in watching interviews about filmmakers I like. And we also have some people in common. And so I had developed this sense of actually an inevitability of a friendship developing when we finally met. And so when I threw my name in the hat and said I would very like to be considered as your Arthur, and Guy said, yeah, thanks very much, but probably not, it actually sort of crushed this illusion that I had, and my feelings were terribly hurt. So yeah, right? And so I said, you know what, it was really, I actually truly didn't think that I was coming to get the film. I wanted to be seen. You know what I mean? I wanted to somebody who I really admired and liked and had cultivated this imaginary sense of friendship to actually say, you know what, you're still not getting the role, but I see you're actually an all right chap.
You wanted to meet a hero.
Yeah. Now, do you feel bad now, Guy?
Yeah. I know exactly what he's doing here, and he's a sly dog. He's looking for the sympathy vote.
What do you need a sympathy vote for?
You know, if my
mom's
mum's watching this, she's about to call Guy to have a word with you.
But you can hear the audience, oh, Charlie, and he's so sweet.
Yeah.
Oh, Charlie.
That's right. That's right.
He knows exactly what he's doing. Yeah. In those interviews, you can't really bluff. You know, they're not really interviews, actually. They're made up on the cuff. It's like, all right, Charlie, what's going on? How many teas do you like in your sugar? That sort of stuff. You nip down the pub, that sort of stuff. And then gradually, as you're sort of messing around, you can't pretend in those sort of things. Whether you are going to get on, you just either do or you don't. So, and then at the end of that, you think, oh, now we should talk about the film. But by the time you got round to that, you're not interested because you go, oh, right, get on with this bloke, and we're off to the races.
So it's really just about, am I going to get along with this person in between takes? And when we're talking about the takes that we're going to do, no one's going to have an ego.
Well, there's egos, don't worry about that. But the thing is that there's a practical aspect to getting on with someone. You're there for 6 months, and from a selfish point of view, I'm going, oh God, I've got to see this geezer for 6 hours a day. And all right, Charlie, can't wait to get rid of this bloke. And you don't want that. So you go, oh, Charlie, all right, Charlie. And then before you know it, you're having a lovely time. But that percolates, that sort of frequency percolates the movie. And, it's as much fun on screen is off. And I don't think that's an accident. And then Charlie gets the rhythm. And I don't like saying this, but a couple of the funniest lines in the movie came from Charlie.
It's an interesting it's an interesting point. Like I think that Guy and I and Djimon too, we've all talked about this week, and it's sort of interesting when you find yourself in this situation. When you're looking back at hindsight, you tend to understand things a bit more acutely than you did even at the time. But the tone of this film, as with every film, is always the biggest challenge, trying to figure out exactly what the rhythm and tone of the film is going to be, because you go into it with interpretation that it might be one thing, but the film itself will actually often dictate that it wants to be something slightly different. And tone is the most important thing in film. And so if you...
Nothing, Charlie. Nothing.
And so if you have an idea that a tone is evolving, but your collaborators are not savvy to the fact, then it makes the whole process quite laborious to have to explain, well, okay, so we said we were going to do this, that's not working, now we're going to evolve into doing this. But if you have the shorthand and you're sort of, moving together in real time, like Guy said, in the same frequency, it just makes the whole job a lot easier.
People who are on the same page enough to sort of all get a sense that something is evolving rather than needing to be told that something is evolving.
Yeah, you can start a sentence and you're pretty sure that everyone else has got to finish it. And that's really what you're after is a shorthand, which is quite hard to get from Charlie, by the way.
Can you guys talk about the choreography at all? Because I think what's different in this film compared to other sort of swashbuckling sword films is
you mean the fight choreography?
The fight choreography, yeah. The dance choreography, John?
Yeah, the ballet.
I thought you said the fat choreography.
The camera is in so many more places than most of their films. He's got what look like little cameras on the side of your shoulders at times. It seems like the coverage is everywhere. I'd imagine you're shooting these fight scenes for days and days on end to get all of this.
Well, I think Charlie had more to do in this film as far as fight coordination is. Yeah, Charlie has more to do. He was fighting the whole world.
Yeah, there's a bit
Go
of
on,
a responsibility.
I can feel a long answer coming on it.
You're right. So one of the challenges of shooting action on film is that you're getting very close to it actually being real, although it's very, precisely choreographed. But you choreograph it so precisely so that you can get close and it can feel very real. But often mistakes are made, and I've done a lot of action in film, and so far I think I've dished out 3 black eyes and 2 broken noses, because mistakes happen. But when you're fighting with...
Did they ever happen back at you?
That's interesting.
You make an interesting point, but when there's just a much, much smaller room for error.
That is not true. There are times where you do take a bit of the leathering.
Yeah, no, I do. I mean, particularly my hands, obviously, as you'd imagine with sword fighting. But the point that I was going to make is that when you're fighting with a sword and you make one of those mistakes, it can be much, much more serious. So part of it is learning all of the choreography to get it right for the sequence. But part of it, obviously, is going the extra mile to make sure you don't muller anyone in the process.
Let's get some questions from the audience. Who's got a right there?
Hi, my name is Mariana, and my question is for Charlie. So I know that most of your time you're spent acting, but I know that you're also a writer as well. So I remember reading a few years ago that you were developing a script for Vlad, and I'm just interested to know, because it's such a cool story to begin with, if you are working on developing that, or is there any other projects in the works? maybe
I've been trying to stay quite busy in that regard. So I have 3 projects aside from Vlad that I've been developing and I've set up at studios. That it's very hard to get films made in this day and age. And so Vlad, we tried really hard. I was working with Plan B, Brad Pitt's production company, that have been enjoying an enormous amount of success recently. But we sort of ran out of steam on Vlad. So I'm hoping that it's an expensive film to make, and my vision of it was quite uncompromising. I wanted to tell the historically accurate version of Vlad without, in my opinion, jumping the shark and actually going into vampirism, which wasn't as attractive or exciting for the studio that I had sold the project to. So we found ourselves at a little bit of an impasse, and because of that, the energy sort of fizzled. But I'm hoping that that Guy will at some point, continue hiring me, and I become a big old movie star, and then I'll have the weight to pull it out of retirement. And maybe if Guy and I don't kill each other by the end of the day, he could maybe have a crack at directing it.
There's no more time for any more questions, Charlie.
I wanted you to keep that going just to mess with it. Just ramble on. Next question.
Hi. So you guys talked about, well, Guy talked about before, the energy on this, like, offset. So I was wondering, like, what was the funniest kind of moment on set? And I feel like Charlie was the goofball on set, but who was, or, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Charlie, over to you.
Oh, thank you very much,
Guy. When you're finished.
I'm not actually the goofball. I tend to be very, very earnest and serious about my process with acting, and Guy recognized this very early, and I think it made him quite nervous. And he said, "All right, sunshine, that's this whatever you're doing, Daniel Day-Lewis impersonation or whatever it is. You can put that to the side, because we have to have fun every day. And if we're having fun and making each other laugh, then the audience will have fun and we'll be making them laugh." So that was his main direction to me, was just stop taking yourself so seriously and have a bit of fun. That's quite short, wasn't it, Guy? Anything to add to that, boss?
I think you're doing very well, Charlie.
All right, thank you. Thank you for noticing.
Let's get another question right here.
Hi, yes, I was wondering how past inceptions of King Arthur inspired this one, such as the Disney movie and the old movie Excalibur, movies that have already been such as those.
Well, funnily enough, I haven't seen many movies to do with King Arthur. Excalibur I have seen, which was in the 80s. John Boorman did a film which actually Charlie and I and Djimon were influenced by. And when as soon as I saw that, I was interested in some incarnation of that. I mean, I was 10. So eventually I filled out my creative arsenal. And at some point when Warner Brothers or whoever was going to give me money said, "Look, we'd like you to do it," then we had enough stuff in the tank to go and make it. But the important thing was not to be intimidated by the legend and all the other incarnations, but was to try and make something that, as long as you caught the essence of it, that a contemporary audience would find stimulating.
You weren't a big Sword in the Stone fan, the Disney?
I never saw it.
Wow. I think we have time for one more question.
We'll take our last question from an online viewer. So Melissa and Cindy from Toronto want to know, for everyone, if you had to challenge someone to a sword fight, who would it be and who would win?
Between us? You mean between us? You mean between us?
Yeah, let's start there.
What sort of a sword fight?
Well, okay.
I don't understand that joke.
It wasn't a joke, Charlie. Not playing it with Djimon, anyway.
Well, right.
Regular swords. Regular swords.
Moving on.
Do you have any swords? I quite like to challenge Guy right about now.
Unfortunately not. Damn. Guys, the film comes out next week, May 12th, right? It's phenomenal. You do an incredible job. Congratulations, Guy Ritchie, one more time. King Arthur, Legend of the Sword. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.